computer. All right, so today we're winding up with the last few forms that we have to do. So the first one is going to be the market condition advisory. This is given out both to the buyer and the seller. And it basically just goes over that one, market conditions do change. We could be in a hot real estate market. We could be in a seller's market. We could be in a buyer's market. Just to understand buyer consideration. So offer and price. As a buyer, you are responsible for determining the price you want to offer. We as agents suggest, we as agents show comps, let the buyers decide what they want to offer. If we give the number and then they don't get it, they go, oh, I would have, done more. If we give the number and they get it, they go, well, maybe I overpaid for it. So all we do is we present the options, they come up with the number. Non-contingent offers. These are, we're just letting them know that if you are non-contingent, you're giving up your right to you're not giving up your right to an inspection. You always have the right to do the inspection, but you're giving up your right that if you find something with the inspection, that you could back out of the deal. So there's the difference. I mean, you're never giving up your right to do an inspection. You're never giving up your right to do an appraisal. You're just making the results of the inspection or the appraisal not contingent on the deal going through. So that's what you're removing, and we just let people know those are the issues, those are the ramifications. As long as they understand it and understand the risks, then it's against broker advice, but we can still do it. Broker recommendations. Broker recommends that you do not write a non-contingent offer, just like we're talking about. Multiple offers. Buyers may write offers on more than one property, even though the buyer intends to purchase only one. This may occur in a short sale when the approval process takes long. In today's market, people are doing it because they don't know which offer they're going to get. If they're lucky, they get one. If they're really lucky, they get two, and now they have to back out of one and move on, because you really can't be moving with two offers unless you are going to buy both of those properties. Seller considerations. Again, seller's responsible for determining the price. We'll show them the comps. We'll show them what's going on. We'll give our advice. Again, not giving an exact dollar amount. It is for them to come up with the dollar amount. Buyer signs, seller signs. And we go into water conservant plumbing features and carbon monoxide detector notice. Okay, so this became we used to have another form. They created this form now to include the water conservant plumbing features. So by law, all single family homes before 1994 need to be equipped with water conservant plumbing features, and they had up until 2017. Again, this is not a point of sale unless you are in LA City, but otherwise it is just, do you know, do you not know if you have them? If you're in LA City, there is actually a retrofit inspection, and I think there's other areas that do this, where it is then a requirement to have low flow toilets, low flow shower heads. So all when we're disclosing is we know or we don't know, and that's on the SPQ and the TDS. Carbon monoxide detectors, those are required. They're not required in every bedroom. They're required in the hallways near the bedrooms, and also on every floor, and also one in the general area. So single family home, you're probably going to have at least 2 carbon monoxide detectors. 2 stories, you're going to have at least 3, one downstairs, one upstairs, and one by the bedroom halls. Again, everyone signs. Any questions? 2 down. All right, now we're going to come up to my fun request for repairs. Okay, so you guys do your inspection. Even though the MLS says, or the purchase contract or the counter offer says, we're not going to do any repairs, you still have the option to do a request for repairs. So we're going to do a request for repairs. It's going to be number 1 as the first one, the date prepared. And again, the only purpose of this date is to identify this document. Do we have a question? Okay, so in accordance with the purchase agreement, there we go. And now we got another one. Hold on. Okay, perfect. So address, who's in between. So here we have a few options. The first one is the buyer requests that the seller, prior to final verification, repair or take the specified action. So what we're going to do is if you say you have your report and you want these 5 or 6 things fixed. So you're going to click this box. You're going to list everything you want as clearly as possible. Water heater, strapped, whatever the request, whatever the inspection report states, let's put it in here as clear as possible so we know exactly what we want them to do. We're not going to say we'd like everything in the home repair or inspection report done. That doesn't make sense. We're basically going to look at, structural, functional issues, chips, holes in, minor holes in walls and things like that. We're not going to request. AC doesn't work, we're going to talk about it. Plumbing leaks, we're going to talk about it. Electrical, we're going to talk about it. A GFI plug, we're going to talk about. So anything that's structural or functional or safety is stuff we should be asking for. And when we ask for it, we want to be as specific as possible. We don't want to say fix, it depends on what the issue is. We want to say what the issue is, where it is in the inspection report, and what resolution we would like.
And also,
Yep.
Fred, with a lot of our property inspection reports, a lot of the inspectors do put what they consider priority, marginal, or to be looked
Right.
at items on
Yep.
a summary page. It's either in the front of the property inspection report or on the last page.
Correct.
But when you write your request for repair, as Fred was stating, to be specific, itemize it. Meaning, so if it's a water heater that needs to be strapped and it's on page 7 and it's item 1A, put page 7, item 1A, water heater to be strapped. Just
Right.
so there's, you have that specific information for them and they're not hunting for it.
Right. And like you say, Chris, correlate it to the report. So this way,
Yeah.
they can look at what pictures or whatever that
Exactly.
needs to be done.
Yeah.
So the 2 questions is 1, I can't fit everything I have on here. So what should I do? Okay. There are 2 things you could do. You could click this button and attach a list, not an addendum. And we'll go over why not an addendum later, but you could attach a list that you type up and just say, list corresponding to request for repairs number 1 dated, and then list all the things you want. Make sure there's signature lines at the bottom. Or, and I promise you, you're gonna have to take my word on this as faith, is you keep typing, and even though you don't see your stuff that you're typing, it will create what's a text overflow box when you print it, and it will be tied to this request for repairs.
And that does work, everyone, because I did not believe Fred when he told me this existed. And so I made him do a Zoom call with me and test it out. So it does work.
Yeah, well, and I'll show you right now. So let's say, item 1 or item 2, item 3, because, and I'll show you why you want to do this. because this causes a lot of problems later. Okay, and we're gonna make this item number 10, just so you can see that it's there someplace. Okay, so there is no item number 10 here. But when we go to print or when we go to look at it, you will see now there's a text overflow addendum tied to the request for repairs, and there's item 10. So you can type as much as you like. And the difference between the text overflow and then this and a actual addendum is this is just, they are acknowledging the conditions here. They're not agreeing to anything, they're just acknowledging, yes, the foregoing items are hereby incorporated, so they acknowledge it. When we look at the addendum is something they are agreeing to. So we've had a lot of sellers go, well, wait a minute, if I sign this, does that mean I'm agreeing to repair all these things? So it creates a little issue. So the two ways is either do the list or a text overflow addendum. Do not use a regular addendum. Okay, so let's say we have all these items, and you know what? Now we also did a termite
Oh, hey,
inspection.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Fred. So
Sure.
we didn't see 10, the item on item 10 on the screen. It was still just showing the request for repair. And if you're not on mute, can you please put your phone or computer on mute, please?
Oh, sorry. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure I'm sharing the correct thing. New share. So let's share my screen. Okay, so let's see if we got it now. Where did it go? Do you guys see it now?
Request for repair, yeah.
Well, do you see the one that says print to print and stuff, right?
Yeah, I see request for repair. I see a page 2 underneath that. So there's the
Okay,
text overflow.
yeah, so here's a text overflow and here's item number 10. And here's where they will sign, but they're not signing that they agree to fix these things. They're just signing that they acknowledge these things exist. Thank you, Chris. Because I can see it. I didn't know what you guys can see.
Yeah, no, thank Anita.
So-
She's the one who pointed it out.
Because otherwise you really have to take my word for it. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's a
so
leap of faith.
there you go. So, okay, so we also did a termite inspection and there is some section 1 work we'd like done. So again, we're going to say, click the box. What's the date of the report and who did the report? And we're going to attach the report to this request for repairs. Section 2, again, if you are a VA loan, you're going to have to require section 2 to be cleared. FHA regular loans, section 2 is not typically required, but again, you can always ask for things. You can ask, doesn't have to be agreed to, but if your client says, you know, I'd really want this looked at, then you can ask. Or let's say we do all this, you know, and we go, what, you know what? We really don't want them to fix any of these things. So what we'd like is we would like a credit at the close of escrow. Again, it's not money they're going to physically get in their hands. It is going to be a credit towards their closing costs. So any credit above their closing cost will be lost. So let's say if their closing cost is $10,000, they can only get a credit up to $10,000. They can't get a $12,000 credit. If the credits, because of the repairs and all that, is more than the credits, we can do a combination of let's lower the price and let's get a credit. So however it works is you work the dollar amounts out, but just remember, you can ask for any credit you want, but you're only going to get a credit up to the closing cost. I've had a deal where one of my agents, you know, because of the condition of the house, they did a $25,000 credit. Everyone agreed to it. But unfortunately, there was only $12,000 in closing costs. So guess what? The buyers didn't get the other $13,000. So make sure you understand, if you're doing this, talk to a lender. You know, if you're doing 1,000 or 2,000, it's small enough, it's not gonna be an issue. If you're doing double digits, talk to the lender to make sure there's enough closing cost credits there to work. Copy of any inspection reports you have, because we want to document what we're doing. Okay, so this is what we do. Buyer signs, sends it off. Any questions on this part?
You're welcome to put your questions in the chat box or raise your hand, and this is going to be a short class today because we only have miscellaneous items, so.
Okay, so no problem, no questions on this part. So now
No.
the seller gets it. The seller has a few options. One, I totally agree with everything you said. We're going to fix everything you said. But for us to do everything that you want us to do, we are requesting that the buyer remove the contingencies on a CR form that we're going to attach. And we're basically, typically we will ask for the inspection contingency to be removed. Okay? Or the seller could say, you know what, I don't agree with any of your requests, and thank you so much. Go pound sand, let's do something else. Or, you know what, I agree with some of your requests. I don't agree with other requests. So I'm going to send you my version, which is called the RRRR. And I will tell you what I'll agree to and what I won't agree to.
But also, I just want to point out that the seller you may not even receive a response for your request for repair.
Correct.
So, and on top of that, I just also want to remind everybody that when you send in your request for repair, when it's within your investigation contingency time, the clock does not stop. So your contingency period is still moving forward.
Correct. And on that note, and this is a tough one that we have a lot of discussion on, your inspection contingency is just that, inspection contingency. So if you are 17 days and you still haven't come up to a resolution on your request for repairs, that is not a reason not to remove your contingency. So they can give you a notice to perform and they can cancel and all that, even though you haven't resolved the request for repairs, because the request for repairs is not a contingency.
And we do have a question. Liliana, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, good morning. So I do have a question about the credit for closing costs versus general credit. What if this is a cash transaction and something?
Then we don't care.
Okay,
They-
so
They can give as much credit as they like because there's no lender involved. It's the lender that has the issue.
so you're saying when there's a lender involved, you can't specify in request for repair, in lieu of all these repairs, we just like $5,000 back and not say that it's for closing costs, right?
No, there is no $5,000 back.
It's
Okay,
always
because-
towards closing costs.
And-
Any credit
Wait,
with a lender is with towards closing costs.
Hold on.
So if,
And hold on. If a
Yep.
lender's involved, you never want to tell them why you're getting $5,000 back. All they're going to see is an addendum saying seller credits buyer $5,000 for closing costs. Once you mention for repairs or anything like that, it opens up a whole can of worms.
it does, I can realize that, but what if the whole offer, the buyer, let's say we're at a different market and the buyer wants, closing costs with the offer in the beginning, and they're already asking for they're offering, let's say 5,000 over, but they're asking for 5,000 in closing costs.
Correct.
And then we get to termite report, or we get to this request for repairs, and it turns out
It all
the
adds
roof
up.
is all bad. Yeah, so it all adds up, and
All
it
adds up.
sounds like you can't add any more. You can't ask for any more because
You
your
can ask,
closing costs.
you can ask for as much up to the closing costs.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
So if you're already given 5,000 and closing cost is 10,000, you can ask for another 5,000.
Yeah, but if,
So-
let's say that the closing costs are just 5,000, let's just say that.
Right.
And you've already asked for it, then if there are some issues like the roof needs replacing or something, then you're kind of out of luck because you can't ask for any more closing costs. Is that right?
No, you could ask to reduce the price, which is
Right.
this one here,
Right.
or you can ask them to repair it.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
you never lost. It's just how you do it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if you're
Okay.
at the max amount of the closing costs after you've had that conversation with the lender, then Plan B would then be possibly lowering the purchase price to that amount or, um,
Yeah, I do know that. I was just asking as far as closing costs, you can max them out because when there's a lender involved, then you can just max them out and you can't ask for any more. So you have to go to these other avenues. I got it.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
And
thanks.
in a different environment, I mean, right now, the interest rates are so low, it's ridiculous. But in
Right.
the past, when the interest rates were high, we were able to work with the lender and say, okay, we'd like to also buy down the interest rates,
right.
which would increase the closing cost.
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
so there's ways to work, but as long as you understand, what I don't want to happen is like what happened with my agent is they made a promise that they're going to do this in closing, and there wasn't enough closing costs, and there was no time to do anything else, so they didn't get that money.
Right. Okay.
That's what I want to make sure you avoid.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so then the seller's response moves on. Now, if the seller agrees, so they check this box here, they agree to everything, then the buyer agrees, and by signing this, they are releasing whatever's on and the attached contingency release goes together. So I'm removing my physical inspection. I signed this, great, we're happy. Then we'll talk about what happens when you do verification of property. Let's say the seller goes, you know what? I really don't like everything that you're asking me for. So I'm going to give you mine. And this is going to be request for repair number 1 because it's a response. The other one was the buyer's request number 1. This is the seller's response and buyer reply number 1. And again, it says, okay, so let's say there's just one thing I disagree with. Okay, so I agree to all the buyer's requests on request number 1, except I'm not going to replace the air conditioner. So you would say that. We're done. You move on. People sign, people agree, we go forward. Or you could say at the close of escrow, instead of all those requests for repairs that you asked me for, I'm going to give you a credit. Again, make sure the credit is within the realm of the closing costs. Or, you know what? I know the credit's a lot. I'm going to actually reduce the price. Okay, so again, they have the same 3 options. I agree to most of it except this one. I'm going to give you a credit, or we're going to reduce the price. Now, what happens here is seller agreement only applies if buyer removes again the physical inspection or any other contingencies, because now at this time, we might be moving our appraisal contingency. So we'll attach a
Contingency removal.
contingency removal. Thank you. I'm thinking of request for repair so much. A contingency removal, whether it's number 1 or number 2. And again, make sure it's sequential. You don't want to have a 1 and a 3. You don't want to have 2 number 1s. So you need to keep them sequential. Okay. Now, the buyer's response. So the buyer could say, you know what? I agree with what you said. I love your credit. It's okay. You don't have to repair the air conditioner. We're going to reduce the price, whatever. Or buyer says, you know what? 5,000 is not enough credit. I'd like $10,000 credit. Or the buyer says, you know what? I don't like any of it. We're going to start all over again. And they're going to do another request for repair number 2. Now, the thing with request for repairs as opposed to counteroffers is each request for repair stands on its own. So if I'm doing a request for repair number 2, number 1 is totally gone. Whatever was agreed to, whatever was not agreed to, that's history. We now start with 2. So you're gonna have to put everything you want on request for repair number 2 and start the whole process. You can do this a few times until everyone either gets sick, tired, or you come to an agreement. There is no limit on how many times this can go back and forth. Okay, then if everyone agrees, then the seller says, you know what, I agree with the modification that you provided, I'll give you 10,000, or does not agree, and now you may submit a new request for repairs. So this can go on for a while.
It shouldn't, but
It shouldn't, but it could. I mean, some people are just so stubborn. This is, oh, I really need this stuff. And some sellers go, no, this is fine. I'm never doing this. So it all, like I say, could go on. But again, as Chris said, this does not eliminate the 17-day or whatever day you agree to inspection contingency. And again, the seller never sees any of this. So whatever comes up out of this and everyone agrees to a modification of the closing costs or modification of the purchase price, you do a separate addendum that says the new purchase price is seller to credit buyer X amount. That's what the lender sees. Never
Okay.
anything that deals with repairs.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. You said the seller never sees any of this, but you meant the
The
lender never.
The lender, yes. Yeah, the lender never sees it. Because if the lender sees anything, request for repairs or anything like that, they now have the right to say, hey, I'd like to see that inspection report.
I know, you said seller, and I'm like, well, how's it, anything gonna get done if the seller doesn't see it?
That's the only way it gets done. Is they never see it and we just agree to it. Okay, so this is a new form that came out a few years ago. Actually, this is 2017. This is an amendment. Before, we only used to have an addendum. So the difference between an amendment and an addendum is an amendment is adding something to the contract. So let's say, I forgot to put something in, so I'm now have an addendum, sorry. I have an addendum. So addendum is always adding, an amendment is changing something in the contract. So when we're doing here, so let's say going back to the closing costs, we are actually changing the closing costs. Instead of 5,000, we're now getting 7,000. So we're going to say seller to credit buyer, $7,000 total for closing cost credit. If
And
we're
also, I'm so sorry, and this would also be applicable for lowering the purchase price though, too, correct?
that was going to be my next statement. Yes.
Okay,
So if you're changing the purchase price, again, you're changing something in the contract. So you are making an amendment. So again, here it would be, purchase price to be X amount of dollars. So anytime you are changing something that's already written in the contract, it's an amendment. When you are adding something, it's an addendum.
we have a question. Liliana, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yep.
Hello again. So with my issue that I brought up yesterday about not doing the seller in possession,
Correct.
even though it was already mentioned in this MLS, we forgot about it later.
Right.
Would I use this form or something else?
Well, this form, you could do it here, but you really want to do a seller in possession form because that's going to outline all the issues that you need to cover.
So that is the only, though, I guess my question is, that's the only form I need then?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and I don't need this to say that seller in possession form will be part of the contract or something. I don't need.
All you need is a seller in possession form that they can agree or not agree to.
Okay, thank you.
And then, and Liliana brings up a point that I want to talk about is an amendment is both parties need to agree. There's a time limit on an amendment. There is no time limit on an addendum. So, it's just like an offer. You have 3 days. Who's making the offer or who's making the amendment and who accepts the amendment or we reject the amendment. Yes.
I have a question. So say you wrote an offer, it was accepted and it was an FHA loan, and then you decide to change the loan type. Would you do an amendment to that?
No, because that, and this is a good question. You don't need the permission of the seller to change the type of loan that you're doing. Now, if you said it's an all cash offer and now you're going for a loan, yes, you would need at least to notify them that you're doing it. The issue there is they don't have to make any modifications to agree with you on this. So let's say you were doing a regular conventional loan. And then all of a sudden you say, you know what, I'd really want an FHA loan. An FHA loan requires a little more an inspection and appraisal. FHA will call out some issues. If any of that stuff happens, the seller doesn't need to agree with it because they accepted your offer on the premise that it was a conventional loan, not an FHA loan. If they knew it was an FHA loan, then they would say, okay, I know an FHA can bring up these issues on my house, so I'm accepting it, knowing that there may be these issues. So it's not that you have to let them, you should let them know you're changing, but they don't have to agree to your change, but they don't have to modify anything else. If you still have a 21-day, loan release, it's 21 days. I don't care if you change your loan 2 days before we're supposed to close escrow. It's 21 days. So that's a little bit different than amendment and addendum. And it opens up a can of worms because a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are doing conventional loans, then they're going to FHA loans. I've seen even people say cash, and then all of a sudden it's not cash. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say, bad stuff going on, but there's a lot of stuff going on for people to get offers accepted right now. And now we have the addendum. So the addendum again is we are adding something to the contract. We forgot something in the contract. This is, let's say the TDS. We forgot to put something in the TDS. So this is stuff we are adding to the contract. A word of advice, and this has happened, is if you need to modify your TDS, okay, please redo a whole TDS. We have had a issue where there was a modification of TDS. First one, we gave it to the buyer, everyone agreed. That fell out of escrow. We had a second offer, gave it to the buyer, everyone agreed. That fell out of escrow. Third buyer, oh, guess what? We forgot to give this modification. So all they had was the original TDS. Something on this TDS, on the modification TDS, was very important to disclose, but it was not disclosed. So if you are modifying the TDS, please do a new TDS. So this way we just have to remember to give one TDS out instead of, oh, wait a minute, here's a TDS. Oh, and now I got to give this addendum too.
What do you do with a TDS? Like if it's already been submitted to the buyer and they've signed it, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot something and I need to basically rescind that TDS and submit a new one.
Correct. That would.
So you do it in addendum?
You would do an addendum, but I'm just saying if you do an addendum and the deal falls through,
right,
for the next deal, create a whole new TDS.
Got it.
Okay, because it's too easy to forget to send an addendum to a TDS, and then we get into a lawsuit and insurance and all that's involved.
Sure.
Okay, so here you see there is no timeline. Okay, and this is the key here. The foregoing items and conditions are hereby agreed to. So if I'm putting my request for repairs here saying you're going to fix this, you're going to fix this, you're going to fix this, and the seller is signing it, they're going, wait a minute, am I agreeing to sign it? And that's where the issue comes when you use an addendum to do the extra things on a request for repair. Now, again, both the difference between the amendment and the addendum is the amendment has a 3-day right. The addendum doesn't, but again, you need both parties to agree to make this part of the contract. If only one party agrees, this is not part of the contract. And contingency removals. This just got changed recently. Okay, so again, what is this tied to? Is it tied to the purchase agreement? Is it tied to request for repairs that they sent us a request for repairs and the only way they're going to agree to it is like if we remove our contingencies? Is it a request for this RRRR? Or is it an amendment? Are we adding this to an amendment of the existing agreement? And here is all the choices we have. And be very careful what you choose. So let's say I'm just removing a single contingency or maybe two contingencies. I will check. Okay, am I removing appraisal? Am I removing investigation? Okay, investigation, remember there are a few parts to the investigation. Okay, am I removing only the physical inspection? Am I removing the investigation of all the documents? Am I removing the entire investigation? Okay, so your investigation is just not a physical investigation. You are investigating all the disclosures that have been given to you from the seller. This condominium disclosures have its own release. So let's say don't have my condo, I am not going to release it. Well, let's say I did get my condo.
Hi, Wes, Debbie Curran, Century 21 Everest, in regards to Snyder. Hi, I wanted to follow up
You're
on
gonna
the
have to
email that
mute
I
her.
sent yesterday,
Yeah.
just to confirm.
There you go. Okay, so again, am I removing the title report that I got? So you could get as granular as you want during this part here. Here you're saying I'm removing all my buyer contingencies except for a loan or appraisal, contingency for sale, or the HOA docs. So let's say, the only thing that I have left is loan contingency. So I'm going to check this and say, I'm doing everything except my loan contingency or my loan and appraisal. So here you get very granular and you're saying, this is what I am removing. Here you say, I'm removing everything except these. Okay. Number C is a very difficult one and you need to understand what you're doing. Here it says, buyer hereby removes any and all buyer contingencies. Okay, so two contingencies that people don't think about a lot is one, the sale of the buyer's property. If I check this, I'm really removing my contingency for the sale of the buyer's property, which I had a, concurrent close on. So I don't want to check this. I want to check this and not remove that sale of buyer's property. The other contingency that people, if they check this, is the contingency to be able to assume the solar lease panels. Okay, if I check this and I can't assume the solar, I've got a problem now because I removed all my contingencies. So be very careful when you pick this choice here. A lot of people go, oh, I'm removing all, yep, I'm done. But they don't think about, other contingencies that may not be noticeable. The sale of my property, the, contingency that I need to be able to qualify and assume the solar lease. So be very careful when you pick this.
And also the insurability of the property. Maybe it's in a flood zone.
Yes.
And the insurance on the home and now puts your buyers out of pocket more money than they expected. And
Yep.
it's just out of their budget.
Yeah, so what, you would pick this and say, I'm removing all this except loan and other, insurability of home or assumption of solar lease, whatever it is. You just want to make sure your buyer is protected to the nth degree, because if you check something wrong and remove something, it could cost them their earnest money deposit. It could cost us some issues going,
Mhm.
with E&O and all that. So we really want to be careful when we check this all button. Okay. Now, the seller also has a contingency sometimes to remove. Okay. The seller can say, I found my replacement property, so I can remove that contingency. They would use the contingency removal also and check this box. Or they said, you know what? I've closed on my replacement property. I'm good to go. Remove this. The closing on replacement property and the contingency of sale on buyer's property, those are automatically removed once we actually close the deal. If you close early on this, you could remove it, but it's going to be removed once you close the deal also. Any questions there? Come on, we got one more to go. Yep.
I don't see anything in the chat box.
Nope. All right.
Okay.
Verification of property. Again, the most misunderstood form that I know of. This is not a time for the buyer to do a new inspection. This is not a time for the buyer to bring their contractor to find out issues. All the verification of property is, it's looking at two things. One, is the property basically in the same condition when I made the offer as when I am closing escrow here? Okay. And two, has the seller done all the repairs I have requested? So the first part is always a problem, because I've had a lot of buyers say, well, I don't want to do my verification of property till the seller's moved out so I could see everything, the carpet and all that. Unfortunately, the seller's probably not going to move out until after close of escrow. And you should be doing your verification of property before you sign loan docs and fund. So this way you have some recourse if there are issues. So the buyer says, hey, I don't want to do it. You as an agent say, you know what? You really need to do it, because this way you can see if there's any other issues that may be in the property. Maybe they haven't watered their lawn in 30 days, or maybe they let their pool go in 30 days and now it's all green. And that's not in the same condition as when we made the offer. We also want to verify that they've done any repairs that we requested, whether, termite issue repairs or, physical repairs in the house, a broken window's been repaired, whatever it is, we want to verify that. Now's not the time to find new things. If you are going through the property and you notice a big hole in the wall that wasn't there before, document that, because that is now a issue. Okay. And we will document this here. And so you see here, it says property is substantially the same, or seller has completed any repairs, alterations. If you do notice certain things, document it here. And if you document it, the seller needs to sign it. If everything is fine and there's no issues found, everything's the same condition, all we require is the buyer's signature. You should send it to the seller, but you don't have to wait for them to respond to your request. Also, if the buyer waives the right to conduct a final inspection, again, they're doing it against broker's advice. And the agent is not to do the final inspection, it is the buyer. If the buyer says, you know what, I'm too busy, can you just go and make sure everything looks good? You go, no, it really is your responsibility to do that at this point. And that is the class.
Man,
Any
you're
questions?
on fire. You're just so fast. Does anybody have any questions about any contracts that we've had this week? Any document?
Yep. Any of the 5 days or any documents we haven't
Yeah.
talked about?
Yes, for this morning, a few of us were on a different Zoom link in a
Yes.
different meeting.
Yeah.
Is it a good class?
Yes, very quiet class.
Yeah, I had sent out a new Zoom link with the email along with these documents that we're covering today, yesterday. And
Oh,
which
no,
is-
it's okay. The only reason I mentioned this is because I was wondering what was, and I know I'll get the recording, But what were the first two forms, I guess, or so
The,
covered
the
in
first, the
set?
first one was the market condition advisory.
Oh, okay.
And then the,
Anything special
uh,
about that one or?
nope, it just tells
No.
you, yep, just tells you prices go up, prices go down. We don't
Yeah.
set the price. You know, you guys, we give you the information. You determine what the price is. And the other was the water conservation and carbon monoxide detector.
And then Loopy was asking when the next contracts class is. And so what Fred and I are trying to do is going every 6 weeks, we try to have a week of contracts class after peak agent. So Russ Orchard, our director of education, we're hoping to have peak agent live back at the Westlake Village office in May. And we will arrange a contracts class, maybe a hybrid live or via Zoom as well.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And so just for everyone's, just so you guys know, so today, later today, I'm going to take all of the recordings from this week, upload it on the YouTube channel, the Century 21 Everest YouTube channel. And I will send everyone the link to access that particular page in the YouTube channel. And that's
Thank
going to
you.
be, yeah, that's going to be done later this afternoon. And because I wasn't a part of class yesterday, I have to find the recording. Fred's going to have to show me how to find the recording. It's on the cloud somehow, but okay. And then when I get today's recording, I'll do that, and I will get those uploaded for everybody. But I will definitely email